Hey everyone. Okay, so today I'm going to show you how to draw palm trees and then we're going to add some light washes of watercolor over them. Okay, so let's get into it. So step one is we're going to be drawing our palm trees. And so what you want to do is start with a trunk and then you're going to have your branches fanning out from the trunk. And here I'm working on Arches watercolor paper with Sharpie. And the reason I use Sharpie is that the Sharpies can handle the paper, but if you use a more delicate pen, like say a micron pen, it won't work well and it'll actually kind of eat up your pens and make them not work so good. So once you have your branches, what you're going to be starting to do is, the palm trees have leaves that sort of come out from the branches. And what you want to do is make these pretty wispy and they're going to be going in different directions. So for each branch, you're going to have some going in one direction and then other ones going in the other direction. And again, the main thing is to make this sort of light pressure when you're doing this. If you press down too hard, it won't look as realistic. So just have kind of a light wispy touch when you're drawing that. So if you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. And if you're a returning viewer, please like and comment on the video and share it with a friend if you have one who's drawing. And I appreciate that. It helps it get out to more people as YouTube recognizes that this is a sign of that people like the video. So thank you for doing that. So for the second palm tree, I'm doing a couple things a little bit different than the first one. So first of all, you probably noticed that the trunk is thicker and it's got more variation, whereas in the first trunk, it's just a silhouette. The second trunk, I'm having a little bit more contrast and it has a little bit more texture to it. And for this one though too, I'm still keeping up that kind of light sketchy pressure. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to build up some contrast between the palm tree fronds. So some are going to be really dark and some are going to be light. And what that is going to do is it's going to help amplify the shape a bit more. So when you're drawing this, what you want to look for though is big shapes. So what people sometimes struggle with when they're drawing anything with nature, really, trees, flowers, is there's always a lot of visual information when you're drawing a tree or something in nature, right? Because there's lots of leaves and it can be overwhelming. So instead of worrying about every single leaf, which is impossible to do, it would take forever. What you want to do is give more of a general sense of the shape. And the reason for that is that when we look at things, it's actually more realistic if you do this because when we look at things, our brain sort of processes out some of the visual information. Like we can't take in every single leaf on a plant. So we look at it actually in terms of how we process it visually, more in terms of big shapes. So always think in terms of bigger shapes and don't think that you have to give every single bit of detail. And this, again, it goes for really anything that you're drawing that's nature, grass, same thing. So hopefully that helps you when you're drawing, natural things, because that's a common issue that people run into. So now for this one, you can see up close how I use this sort of like wispy pressure to get it looking more realistic. And one thing that you want to work on if you're drawing with pen is learning how to control the lines better. So in the description for this video, I'll link one of my other videos that's on some exercises that you can do for line control, because that's a common thing that people struggle with, is just learning how to control your lines. And I also have a course that dives deeper into all these topics. So if that's of interest to you, check out the description. There's a link over there. So for this last one, you'll notice that I'm drawing kind of differently than the first three. And again, I did this because I want to show you a few different variations, not only in terms of different trees, palm trees, but in terms of the style that I'm using to draw them. And in this one, I'm just adding a little bit of texture on the trunk. And the way to do that is just add some sketchy horizontal lines along the trunk that kind of mimics the texture of a palm tree. Okay, so now we're going to add our watercolor washes. So I started by mixing up a nice lavender color, which is with alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue. And you want to use a pretty thick, flat brush on here. So in this case, the brush really does matter a lot. And so does water. As far as your watercolor wash goes, you want kind of the Goldilocks approach here. You don't want too much water and you don't want too little. And since you're going to be putting down a pretty good amount of water in general, it is helpful to tape down your paper. It will prevent it from buckling. And so here you, of course, can see that the concentration of paint is a lot different than the first one. There's a lot more pigment on the brush, which is going to make it darker, right? So the more water you use, the lighter. In watercolor, you don't really use white very often. You just use water to dilute the color. And so I'm trying to get the sort of like ombre effect going from dark to light. So the way to do that is to start with your pigment on the brush, and then as you go further down into the sunset, you just have more water on your brush, less pigment, which makes it lighter. Now for this one, I'm just using cadmium red and alizarin crimson, and just going for a different effect than the other purple ones. But as you can see, it's the same idea where I'm taking my brush with just some water on it and I'm using that to make more of a gradient towards the bottom. Now for the second layer, you can go ahead and add some more variation in your wash. So if on the first layer you didn't quite get the maybe the level of depth of color that you want and you want to just make it a little bit more interesting with another color coming into it, the second layer is when you can do that. And if you put too much pigment on the paper, like I just did, what you can do is take some paint off your brush and then just go back over it and kind of like help sort of like scoop up the paint. So that happens. So learning how to troubleshoot some of the issues that you run into is really helpful. And that's one that's a common thing that if you just need to get some of the paint off the paper, you just use that technique. And so for this one, I want to go from sort of like a deep alizarin crimson to cadmium red, then to cadmium yellow, and then to lemon yellow. So kind of like that part of the gradient on the watercolor tray. So as you can see, those colors are all coming through right there. And in this one in the top right, I had one of those cauliflower blooms, which is when you have too much water, it makes those kind of like weird texture marks. And so in the second layer, what you can do is you can just go back over it. And a lot of times you can kind of get rid of them that way. So if it bothers you, that's something to just try. Okay, so here's the final painting. At the very end, I take off the tape and it leaves that nice clean edge. And that's it. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks again for watching.